to pick off where we left off when we were talking about concepts of phrases with 2 notes per string, especially in a rock blues sort of setting. So I'm going to continue that idea. I'm going to do most of this in the key of D. I'm tuned down a half step on this guitar, so we're actually in D flat. But I'm going to introduce another trick, and that's the idea of hybrid picking. So hybrid picking is where you use your pick, and then you use a finger, and you alternate between those. So I'm going to primarily be working off of the D minor pentatonic scale, but I'm going to do it in this position. And not only am I going to use hybrid picking, but I'm going to incorporate open strings. So I'm going to do, so it's a pick with a hammer on, and then I use my finger to pick the very next open string. That kind of idea. So I'm still thinking 2 notes per string. I'm actually playing 2 notes per string, and then I'm hitting another string open with hybrid picking techniques. So when you start incorporating some of these ideas, and then you mix it up a little bit with some hammer-ons and pull-offs, like so now there's an open string, and it's going to be hybrid picking. You can come up with some really interesting, quirky sounding phrases because you'll get a lot of double notes. Which makes things sound pretty fast. And it's relatively easy to do once you get accustomed to that hammer-on pull-off with the hybrid picking. Still, I'm thinking 2 notes per string. So let's take that idea and expand that a little further. So now instead of thinking of scales, I'm going to think more in terms of chord shapes, partial chord shapes. All right, so like this. That's in the key of D. That's implies a D minor. And then I take these sort of phrases. Right? And I'll do a kind of a cool trick where I'm going to play those things where I'm incorporating that hybrid picking and then the open string. Some really cool ideas that come out of that. But it's basically sort of pentatonic stuff with some, chord shapes. You're implying some harmonies there. So then a trick I use a lot is a concept of playing this shape and then inverting that. So what I'm really doing is I'm playing a D minor to a C fifth. But I'm not thinking about that at the time. I'm not thinking about what chord that is. I'm just thinking about sort of flipping those shapes around. So you can go from a... or depending on what you want to do. So that starts to sound really interesting, right? So if you start to combine a lot of those ideas, you get some really interesting phrases but you're still thinking 2 notes per string. Cool stuff, right? All right, so you might be thinking, okay, that's great. You're in the key of D and you can get away with those open strings because, well, one of your open strings is a D, right? That's a fit. That's an A, right? So that's the 5th in the key of D. And a G, you can get away with that. That's a 4th. But what about the other open strings? Well, you can actually make, in the key of D, you can make all the open strings work in the right circumstances. The weirdest one is the B string. To play a B in the key of D, it's a major 6. But if you're doing a D minor Dorian kind of thing, that's the Dorian note. It's that B. So you can definitely. You just have to kind of find a way to work it. Totally works. What about the E string? Well, the E is a 2nd note in the D scale, so you can definitely make that work too. It's going to kind of imply a 9th sound, so you can make that work. It's got kind of a unique sound. So you can make that sort of work. Kind of a dissonant sound. Sometimes dissonance is good. But if you move a little further into the D scale, doesn't sound quite as bad, right? Doesn't sound quite as weird. So you start putting all that together. You get some really cool phrases. Then you can kind of utilize all of those open strings to make some really interesting things happen.